A provocative, threatening and unfriendly act as Australia signs a landmark mutual defence alliance with Fiji and locks in a deeper military pact with India. Beijing sends a fiery warning shot across our bow. Has the Indo-Pacific officially entered a dangerous new missile age? I'm Patricia Karvelas. Welcome to Insiders. The Prime Minister's had a big week on the world stage. He's locked down key foreign policy and strategic deals, effectively doubling Australia's number of alliances. The deals span defence partnerships, nuclear energy, Pacific regional security and football, while a landmark agreement with India positions it as a top-tier security partner for Australia. All sealed with a rockstar stadium reception for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But Anthony Albanese's newfound success winning friends and influencing neighbours hasn't gone unnoticed in Beijing.
Over from my valley to yours, Banaka.
Well, we've had a great morning.
The Prime Minister inked a historic military alliance with Fiji.
We know that we're stronger when we stand together.
Fiji and Australia as trusted partners.
Banaka, Bakalebu.
I do not expect China to have any severe pushback.
China has test-fired a nuclear-capable long-range missile.
It travelled over the Philippines, landing in waters northeast of Solomon Islands.
We regard this as destabilising.
This is a provocative act.
It's provocative. Disappointing.
Destabilises.
It knows is threatening, which it knows is coercive.
Provocation, intimidation, and it is unwelcome.
Which does destabilise the region.
We're living in an era more unstable than the Cold War.
We don't want anybody testing the ICBMs in the Pacific Islands. This is not something a friend does.
For 125 years, it took us to have two alliances. We've done two now in the last 12 months.
They always say the best wine comes last. So we expect the best wine.
Beijing may have long-range missiles, but Australia's got something far more regionally persuasive: football.
I am delighted to join you as we launch the Pacific Rugby League Partnership.
It's footy diplomacy in action.
He's got the ball away!
My friend, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, my brother.
Tonga is very privileged to come together under the leadership of Australia.
Today, our Pacific family draws closer together.
He's got there!
Origin diplomacy is actually genuinely a part of what we need to do in the Pacific, because they love their footy.
He scores the try!
The Indian Prime Minister is receiving a rock star's reception in Melbourne.
He wants our uranium, striking a deal for billions of dollars.
Modi, go back! No uranium for you!
The energy that we feel in here tonight, two great democracies, two great multicultural societies. We're a better nation because we have you in it. Please join with me in welcoming my friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Grow more! Grow more!
Joining me on the couch this morning, 7:30's political editor Jacob Greber, senior correspondent for The Guardian Australia Sarah Martin, and national affairs editor at the Nine Network Andrew Probyn. Welcome to all of you. Lovely to be here with you all. Jacob, huge week for the Labor government, for Australia, for Anthony Albanese, a Pacific blitz and some significant agreements signed. Why is it a big deal?
Look, it's really the jewel in the crown, I think, of the Albanese government's diplomatic efforts, its international focus. From the get-go, when it won in 22, there was a full-court press into the Pacific to make up, a perceived fallback in ground from the previous government. That's now evolved. There's an enmeshment of all these countries with various security agreements.
And the Fiji agreement specifically that was signed this week, that's huge, right?
That's very big. And there's others in the works. The PNG one was actually brought into force this week. So very, very momentous week in the Pacific. The broader question is what now comes behind it in terms of really the sort of military muscle and hardware that underpins these peaceful deals.
And then we had, timing is everything, Andrew Probyn, the Chinese nuclear submarine test, dummy warhead, but really significant in the Pacific. A lot of people reading into the timing of it. Was it about Australia?
Look, it was definitely about the region. It was definitely about Beijing reminding the region who's powerful. It's got the might, it's got the military. Yes, it would have taken months, if not weeks, for planning, but it takes just a few hours to decide when you press that button. It was an act of intimidation and provocation, absolutely no doubt. And it was aimed fairly and squarely at Australia's actions in the Pacific and the fact that we are trying to counter, because we can't counter the military in terms of military, but we can counter with that diplomacy. And I thought it was a terrific week for the government on that front. I mean, it's a hell of an achievement. And they're now trying to unpick the Solomon Islands from China's influence, and Samoa and Tonga will be next.
Yeah, it was a really big week, Sarah, and of course it culminated in the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day visit to Australia. Again, significant deals there. Deeper defence arrangement, top-tier alliance there, a deal there, a treaty there. And then this other element, which is selling our uranium to India. Now, that is not without... That's pretty contentious, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the government has made clear that that is not for their weapons program, that is for peaceful purposes, and they've overcome some of the administrative roadblocks to being able to do that. It's obviously a lot less controversial than it was, 10 years ago when we were having a debate about exporting uranium. India is interesting. We're obviously becoming more enmeshed with India. The Lowy poll recently showed that Australians now trust India more than China and the United States, even though our knowledge and understanding of the country is quite shallow. So only 25% of people could name Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister. So, it's an interesting, evolving relationship, and clearly the past week has shown that Australia sees it.
Yeah, and Anthony Albanese and Narendra Modi seem to have a kind of good rapport, but Narendra Modi is not without his critics and his human rights record, his ability to just answer basic questions of journalists, which he doesn't.
Well, he doesn't answer any questions. I mean, that's one of the things about this trip. It's like, we can celebrate Narendra Modi, but he didn't come here and play by Australian rules. And the golden political Australian rule is you answer questions. He doesn't answer questions at home or abroad. Now, the notion that this might be a cultural thing, it's not. This is a Modi thing. I've been on trips with the Prime Minister where the Indian Prime Minister has had not only taken questions from journalists, but had a crack at Australia for the treatment of Indian students, for example, but we had none of that.
No, and this is the great democratic hope in the region, right? So, if you can't come to Australia and answer questions, obviously hugely popular within the Indian diaspora, but there are a lot of critics as well for his government at home and also the impact on minorities and so forth. So he should have taken questions, and I think it's difficult to reconcile those two things.
No, but Jacob, it goes to the incredible pragmatism of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, former lefty in the Labor Party, but he is all about solidifying these deals, these relationships. He's pretty happy to put aside some of those other issues to achieve those aims.
Oh, the whole thing was a pretty slick affair. Buttoned down, as you say. There's no room for unexpected conversations or journalists' pesky questions. But I think that probably did suit the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, because there were two things. One was obviously the multicultural aspect of that very, very large diaspora. That's something he wants to be associated with for all sorts of reasons, but mainly Pauline Hanson. And the second thing, and I think this is where there's a little bit more problem, the uranium deal reminds Australians that we are one of the world's biggest exporters of uranium. yet we don't use it here. And I think the opposition saw a bit of an opening there.
Yeah, they certainly did. On that multicultural question, I just found that so fascinating. Here we have in Australia about 1 million Indian Australians. In the midst of a debate about multiculturalism versus monoculturalism, the PM just leant right into it, didn't he? He was like, we're a multicultural nation, you belong here. He wants to make all of those Indian Australians his voters, right?
Yeah, well, we are. And, I mean, it's sort of a statement of the obvious to a certain extent.
And yet it's been contested.
Yeah. Yeah, but also there's an electoral advantage there as well for the Prime Minister to bring that diaspora on side. As you say, 1 million Indians in Australia, obviously not all of them have voting rights, but still, it's a hugely important demographic.
Yeah, 38% of the Indian community lives in Melbourne. But it also works on the... there's an echo of the past here because of what happened, and India remembers very poorly that time about 15 years ago when we had a few Indian students who were killed tragically in Australia. So I think there's also that sort of undercurrent.
Yeah, and there is a sort of sense now that if you look at the Prime Minister from the first time he became Prime Minister to now, actually on international issues, he's had quite a lot of success, Jacob. Like this week really solidified that for him, didn't it?
No, I think you're right. And I think in that first term there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of nervousness then after the election with Trump, obviously how he would manage that. Now he nailed the landing there, as it were, and he's doing it again here in the Pacific. So I think it's an area where he can feel confident. As Andrew said, it's been a very successful week for the Prime Minister.
It has, but on the China question, he also came into office saying we're not going to be in the deep freeze, we're going to fix this relationship. Now, Labor will tell you we're using the same language, but I think there has been a sort of hardening of the language in response to this sub-test this week, this nuclear warhead test dummy.
Nuclear-capable warhead.
Are you getting the vibe as well that there is a strengthening of the language?
Look, I think that Beijing is Beijing, and the government's going to just keep a pretty hard line on it, but be amicable and civil about it. I think you can. I think you can have it both ways. I think you can be critical of what some of the stuff that Beijing does, but be mindful too about this very, very important trade relationship that we have. I think that's just going to be, this is the new world, this is going to be as it is. You have a nation, a very populous nation, very north of us, very, very critically important, but they're going to be reminding everyone of their humiliation for 150 years, including their own humiliation at their own hands, and I think that some of that is what we're seeing.
I think the other thing to note is that obviously the test that China did is also about the US, right? And it's showing their capability, it's showing their second strike capability, and so that's also, part of this geopolitical framework that, is relevant. So I think the other interesting thing about the Ocean of Peace Alliance is that, who else is going to join that? Are we sort of at the cusp of a new sort of mini NATO alliance in the Pacific, which obviously is
really
the
key achievement. Time now to talk to the Minister for Defence Industry and Pacific Island Affairs, Pat Conroy. But first, the opposition says China's missile test has exposed just how unprepared Australia is for conflict.
My concern is that Australia does not have adequate integrated air and missile defence to intercept a ballistic missile like this if it was coming in our direction, or if we judged it was going to hit an allied or friendly country and we wanted to intercept it. We haven't been spending enough, and we're not moving fast enough on things like air and missile defence.
Pat Conroy, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, PK.
Has China shown that it is both capable of reaching the Australian mainland or any Pacific nation now through its nuclear test this week?
Well, China possesses very long-range missiles capability, both conventionally armed and nuclear armed. There's no disagreement there. What we're seeing in the region is the biggest arms race, the biggest build-up of military since 1945, and concerningly, that is occurring without any transparency or strategic reassurance. So that is the context that we face, and that's why the Australian government is pursuing diplomacy as our first course, but also providing the biggest increase in our defence funding in peacetime ever. We need to do both, invest in our defence and invest in our diplomacy.
So what's the nightmare scenario that you see unfolding in the Pacific?
Well, a nightmare scenario is obviously conflict in our region. We have to be careful about not getting into hypotheticals, but I highlighted when I represented Australia at the NATO summit this week that a conflict in the Indo-Pacific would be catastrophic for the globe, not just our region, and we must do all we can to prevent that. That's both through diplomatic means and through deterrence by investing in the Australian Defence Force.
And do we have the capability, Minister, to shoot down one of these missiles if this were to occur?
We're investing record amounts in missile defence. Let me give you a couple of examples. We brought forward by 4 years the introduction into service of the Standard Missile 6. This is a critical air defence missile for our Navy. We brought it forward 4 years compared to the plans of the previous government. We're investing $30 billion in missile defence through our National Defence Strategy we released this year, including increasing by 400% our investment in active missile defence. Think interceptors, things to shoot down missiles.
If a scenario like this, a nightmare scenario which you countenanced, were to unfold in the Pacific in the next few years, we wouldn't be able to shoot a missile like this down, would we?
Well, it's important not to go into too many hypotheticals, PK. That's not what a responsible
But you did
minister
raise
does.
it in your speech this week.
But let me talk about our capabilities, for example. So we have SM-6 missiles on our air warfare destroyers. We're upgrading the combat system, the Aegis combat system, so that they can provide even more advanced missile defence for Australia. We've introduced into service the NASAMS missile defence system that's equipping the Army right now. We've got a range of other capabilities to intercept missiles, but we need to do more, and that's why we're investing $30 billion in it, including a 400% increase in our active missile defence investment, including introducing medium-range ground-based air defence systems. So,
but we are vulnerable right now. I know you're saying these investments are being made right now where China is flexing its muscle and demonstrating what it could do. Obviously, this was a test, a dummy, but could do. If this were to happen, we're completely vulnerable.
Well, PK, we've got a range of capabilities in service right now. Think the Standard Missile 6 is one example. We've got other systems in place and we're doing more. The critical thing is you can't stand still. This is a race where we need to make sure that the Australian Defence Force has the best possible equipment, and that's why we're providing the biggest peacetime increase in defence funding ever. We're getting on with doing it, but we've got good capabilities now that we are improving right now as well.
You represented Australia, you just referenced this, at the NATO conference, and you spoke behind closed doors to your fellow ministers, defence ministers. You said even a limited conflict over Taiwan or significant disruption to trade and supply chains would damage Euro-Atlantic interests and have far-reaching global consequences. Are we prepared for a conflict over Taiwan?
Well, again, we're prepared for a conflict in our region. Everyone is working very hard to avoid it. My main message to NATO is that the conflicts are no longer local, they're global. We're seeing that right now. We're feeling the impact of the conflict in Ukraine. And my message to NATO was a conflict in the Pacific would have a similar impact on Europe, and the future of NATO and the Indo-Pacific Four, which is South Korea, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, are inseparable, and we need to work together.
And did that risk of that kind of conflict, did that go up a notch this week through this demonstration of their reach and power, the Chinese?
Well, it certainly was a provocative action and it destabilised our region, and it's something that we have expressed our concern and to the Chinese government. So, again, the impact of it in terms of the stability of the region, that's
and is there any
call for
consequence,
to make.
Minister, I ask politely, to us raising concerns? What response has the Australian government got? Do you have any assurances that we'll be given more warning next time, for instance?
Well, again, I'm not going to get into detailing confidential discussions between governments. We don't engage in megaphone diplomacy.
But has it
we've
happened?
Expressed our concern. We've expressed our concern to the Chinese government at a number of levels, and we'll keep doing that. I think, importantly, it has hurt China's standing in our region. You just have to look at the response from Pacific nations, from the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands saying that it's not an act of a friend, to comments from the Fiji and the Papua New Guinea government, the President of Palau, the Prime Minister of Tuvalu. I don't think this was conducive to China's standing in the region, and I think it was a provocative action.
The Solomon Islands Prime Minister says there is growing consensus for a broader regional security agreement. Did China's action, has it emboldened nations, including Australia, to sign a broader agreement now?
Well, I think it demonstrates again that the Pacific security can only be provided from within the Pacific. That's the essence of leaders' communiques over a number of Pacific Island forums, and we're up for that conversation. The policy of the Albanese Labor government in the Pacific is we turn up, we listen to the priorities of Pacific leaders and we act on them. And that's why we've got 2 more alliances than we did a couple of years ago. That's why our standing in the region has improved massively. Australia is now safer and more secure because of the actions of Prime Minister Albanese in the Pacific this week.
So just to be clear, this
regional, over the last 4 years.
This idea for a regional security agreement, are you actively working towards it now?
Well, we're up for it, but importantly, it needs to be driven by Prime Minister Wale, given he's the current chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, and he's the one who's
He says he does want to do that. What has he asked of Australia to try and accelerate it happening?
Well, again, I don't get into confidential discussions between governments. That's not how we engage in diplomacy. But Prime Minister Wale has said it's in the region's interest, and he intends to pursue this at the PIF leaders summit coming up in late August. This would take a number of years if the rest of the Pacific was up for it. But ultimately, it's a decision of all the Pacific leaders. We act on a consensus approach, but importantly, we've now got an alliance that's come into effect with Papua New Guinea, an alliance we've signed with Fiji. We've signed landmark security treaties with Vanuatu, with the Nakamal, with Tuvalu, with Nauru. Australia has a range of treaties and agreements that mean that we're safer now than we were 4 years ago.
But would it, you say it's up to them to lead it, is it in Australia's interest? Will you be going into that PIF pushing for it to happen? Are you committed to it happening?
Well, it's in Australia's interest because it's consistent with both our policy in the Pacific but the whole PIF approach, which is that if there's gaps in security within the Pacific should ask other Pacific nations to fill them. And that's the strong policy of the Albanese Labor government. That's why we've signed alliances and treaties with a range of governments. We're up for the conversation, but importantly, this should be driven by the Pacific leaders and the Pacific peoples.
But your message to the Minister is we're on board. You drive it, but Australia's on board.
Absolutely, PK. That's a good summation of it. It would be consistent with our approach to individual countries. We're proud to be the security partner of choice for the Pacific, just as we are the development partner of choice. This is all about peace and stability in our region. Australia's peace and prosperity depends upon a stable, peaceful and prosperous Pacific, and we're working every day to engineer that.
Minister, you've also announced a new agreement with India. It traverses a couple of different things, but India is not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty yet. And this week you've agreed to sell them our uranium. Why are you so confident that it won't assist India in its nuclear program?
Well, the visit by Prime Minister Modi was a landmark event in the relationship between the two countries. We've been working even closer together over the last 4 years. India is a rising global power, the biggest democracy in the world, and is a force for good on the international stage, and we want to work closely together with them. In terms of your question about uranium exports, this has been agreed for some time. What caused the delay was getting in place those safeguards to deal with the question you asked, PK.
But there's still not a signatory to that agreement. And it was our criteria that you had to be a signatory for us to sell uranium. Why have you bent the rules for India?
Well, governments of both persuasions, both the Liberal previous government and our government, have been working towards putting in place safeguards so that we are confident that the uranium will only be used for their domestic energy production. We're satisfied that the systems are in place for that, and that's why we've been in the position to reach the agreement that we did this week.
Minister, one of the arguments that's being used is if they can use more of our uranium for their domestic energy use, it frees up uranium for their nuclear program. Isn't that a risk?
Well, PK, we're responsible for what our uranium is used for.
Well,
and
not
that's
really.
why those
The
safeguards are in
consequences
place.
matter, don't they?
Well, the consequences for our uranium, PK, what India does with its uranium is a question for them. Obviously, we call for nuclear non-proliferation. We call for a world where nuclear weapons are not used and are safeguarded.
But we're making it easier, aren't they, for their pathway?
Well, ultimately, we're responsible for our uranium, PK, and we're very confident that it will be used for peaceful energy production, and that's what we're responsible for, and we're taking care of that as good international citizens.
Just a couple of other issues. Five Eyes cyber agencies have issued a warning that AI is rapidly transforming cyber risk, not in years but in months, is the warning. Is the government spending more on submarines than it is our ability to deal with a foreign cyber attack?
No, we're not. We're investing in both, PK. This is a really challenging sort of frontier of technology, and that statement by the Five Eyes cyber security agencies was a historic event. That's why we're providing record investments in the Australian Signals Directorate through Project Red Spice. This is rapidly upgrading the capabilities of the Australian Signals Directorate to defend Australia against not just traditional cyber intrusions, but AI-generated cyber attacks, as well as providing them with other capabilities. So
and would you agree
we're investing in our cyber defence.
A cyber attack is actually a much bigger risk than any other kind of attack we could face in coming months or years?
Well, again, we have a range of attacks, risks. Some are conventional military attacks, others are cyber attacks by both governments and non-state actors, and that's why we're investing in both the ASD as well as AUKUS as well as the Australian Defence Force as a whole. Good governments need to do all of those things, and that's what we're doing, investing in our cyber defences as well as our conventional defences.
OK. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister will give a landmark speech about the future use and guardrails around artificial intelligence in our country. There are many elements of it, as I've been briefed, but there is an element in relation to defence. Are you worried about AI companies dictating how their technology is used in Australian defence?
Well, AI is obviously a huge challenge for all sectors of our society, including defence. It's important that we do three things. We have to seize the opportunities of AI. We can't be left behind while other countries dominate in this area. Secondly, we need to make sure that we spread the benefits of AI to workers and the broader community.
But if I can
and
bring
third,
you back
we have
to
to keep Australians safe.
To the defence element, there are risks, aren't there, of AI in defence? And is the speech going to outline how the Australian government will deal with it?
Well, again, I'm not going to get ahead of the Prime Minister's speech. It's for him to make those statements. But you're absolutely right. There are risks of AI to defence as well as opportunities. That's why we established a Defence AI Centre in 2024 under this government. That's why we've put in place a number of safeguards. But importantly, we're also seizing the opportunities. We lead the world in large autonomous systems like the GhostBat collaborative combat aircraft, the first combat aircraft designed and built in this country in 50 years, as well as the Ghost Shark extra-large underwater autonomous vessel that is a robot submarine. Both of these autonomous systems are making Australia safer by coming into service with the Australian Defence Force, as well as generating thousands of jobs in Australia. So AI is both a risk and an opportunity, and you need to deal with it. You can't run and hide away from it. You've got to engage in it. Australia's led the world in engaging technology in other areas, such as the social media ban, and Prime Minister Albanese's speech on Wednesday will outline our broader approach to AI, including in defence.
Minister, many thanks for joining us on Insiders.
Thanks, PK. Have a great day.
Coming up, the PM and the podcast, how the Prime Minister's foray into political comedy has left few laughing. But first, let's bring in our panel. Jacob Greber from the ABC's 7:30, Sarah Martin from The Guardian, and Nine's Andrew Probyn. Pretty tough language there on China and our region and a potential regional agreement, Jacob.
There was. I was interested in the Minister's answers to whether, the degree to which we've complained to China and particularly the level at which that was done. The government earlier in the week said it would be taken up at the highest levels, by which I would assume Penny Wong speaking to Wang Yi, her equivalent, the minister there in that interview saying it had been taken up at levels. So there's a bit of ambiguity there. The consequence of that, if the government was not able to directly communicate that to the top of China's ministry, you'd wonder.
Yeah, and no guarantees either, Andrew.
No,
time frames for warnings, all of that.
Absolutely not. But we're not in a world where anyone follows any rules anymore. Aren't we in the rules-based order?
Rules-based
order is when the US accept the red card for one of its players at FIFA. I mean, if you're corrupting the rules-based order at that level, then it filters down. So when we start berating China, China could literally look at the World Cup and say, excuse me?
Yeah. I love... This man's been watching
way too much.
All morning. He's just revealed where his mind's really at. But I think, Sarah, this just shows the difficulty, I think, in kind of traversing this relationship. But when it came to the readiness of Australia, if, war did break out, he did talk about there being a risk, a genuine risk in the Pacific, a nightmare scenario. We're not really quite ready yet, are we?
No, and that's why we're doing this. That's why we are attempting to have these formal security alliances. That's why we're going to see members of PNG joining the ADF. Like this is a serious problem, and Australia is acutely aware of it, and we're trying to walk that line.
Yeah, it's quite the line. Well, this week, a major Telstra outage caused chaos across the country, including to the 000 system. Many are now demanding the government make the company pay.
A major outage is impacting Telstra users right across Australia.
It's been a big disruption to many people's days, and we apologise for that.
My absolute priority today is getting everybody back online.
Our teams are working right now as quickly as possible.
There's no evidence of it being malicious.
I hope it's just a coincidence about the intercontinental ballistic missile that went into the Pacific.
I can understand why Australians are drawing that connection.
When it comes to matters of national security, you shouldn't make stuff up.
Now, I don't know whether there's any connection or not.
It's irresponsible.
I have no idea.
Those trying to call 000 have been left hearing nothing but a dial tone.
We conduct welfare checks when any call to 000 fails.
I had a couple of failed calls this morning because obviously I needed to know.
Do not make test calls to 000.
Look, I do think the government needs to be doing a lot more.
We've legislated the 000 custodian. We've raised penalties for telcos. We've introduced real-time reporting of outages to ACMA.
It's time to scrap the self-regulation and to put in place proper laws.
We understand what caused the issue.
Australians can feel confident in calling 000.
But it is now time for Telstra to face the music, and I will hold them to account.
Time for Telstra to face the music. What does facing the music look like, Jacob?
Look, they have to be yelled at. They've got to be dragged in front of Senate committees.
Which is happening Friday.
There's a lot of huffing and puffing. It seems to be what now happens with these outages. It doesn't matter who it is. I think there was a sense that Telstra was above and beyond this kind of a problem when we had the issue with the Optus outage. Now it's on them. They've got to fix it. They've got to explain it. I think there was some very interesting reporting in the Sydney Morning Herald that it looks like it was a piece of equipment worth maybe $15,000, $20,000 that they didn't upgrade in time. That's a classic Challenger shuttle O-ring issue where you bring down millions and millions of dollars of technology, hundreds of millions of dollars of technology with a tiny little...
But it's not like there's any alternative to Telstra either. This is the problem. I mean, it is going to be about fines and yelling at them. What else would we do? But what worries me is that something so small can bring such calamity. Something worth $22,000 might be
like
responsible.
a mistake or a mismanagement.
And it is so astonishing that this thing happens. That's probably why a lot of people go, is this the Chinese? you know. And so this is the subtle politics of it all, because we are so vulnerable, it turns out.
The Chinese didn't order that part. It wasn't,
it
wasn't on them.
No, the Chinese probably would have paid for it and delivered it earlier if it was that. But let's go. I trust that. But let's go to what you're alluding to, which is Barnaby Joyce, now in One Nation, first raised this, you'd have to call it a conspiracy because we don't have evidence of it. Sure, there are warnings that, you know, foreign actors like China could do these sorts of things, but we didn't have the evidence. Then Angus Taylor said, could be, I don't know. He did say he didn't know. What did you think of them jumping on those things before any evidence?
You know, Barnaby Joyce doesn't have to say everything that pops into his head as a starting point. No, I mean, he does. Okay. He has a tendency. But, I mean, you know, I think that it's easier to say that and talk to a conspiracy theory than actually look at the real problem here, which is that Telstra, which has an effective monopoly in large parts of Australia, we still have the duopoly that we weren't supposed to have when Telstra was privatised. Like, the whole point of that was to create competition in the market. And Telstra has fundamentally failed in its obligations to the country because it has no obligations to the country. It only has obligations to shareholders. And quite frankly, I think, you know, like the penalties, it's not even clear if they will be penalised for this, right? So, and if they will, maybe in 12, 18 months' time, they'll get a little, you know, small fine. It's unlikely to be $30 million, which again is nothing to a company like Telstra, right? So does the government need to actually consider nationalising the emergency services network? I mean, I think that's what people expect. Like they expect something that is so critical. If the major providers can't actually prove that they can do that, which they've shown that they have failed, then there has to be a conversation about what the government can do to change that.
Well, this is the thing, Jacob. Obviously, Telstra is in charge of Telstra. It is a corporate that should be held to account for its own behaviour. But the government this week got really embroiled in a lot of the politics. Annika Wells is the Communications Minister. She cut her leave and came back to work, essentially, because it was such a significant crisis. The government will have to demonstrate that it will act on this.
Oh, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll end up getting there because they're under pressure for the reasons you just explained. And I think the opposition feels that there's a weakness there that they can try and, exploit. And so I think this is where they've got ahead of themselves. You know, we've seen people claiming things happened that turned out not to have happened. And
you think you're referring to the South Australian 000 call.
Right, exactly, where, you know, the suggestion was someone had tried to connect, didn't, and then it ended tragically for them. That's
Telstra did ultimately confirm, though, that a family member who wanted to get in contact couldn't use their phone line.
You know, and then we had this other minister, we had this other shadow minister testing the system, which you're not supposed to do because that clogs the system up. So there's a sort of eagerness to score the political point, and it's left some of those folks in the opposition quite badly exposed.
But I think it was interesting and very instructive that the government obviously feels so vulnerable on this particular issue. Then in the press conference with McBain and Wells, Chrissy McBain actually volunteered the whole Sarah Henderson calling 000 thing. Now, I actually thought that was a strategic error. That you're actually revealing your own vulnerability on the politics by wanting to point your finger at the opposition.
Perhaps both jumped on the politics early when they were
straight to it. Straight to it.
Because Australians just couldn't use their phones. I still can't quite use mine. I don't know what's happening. But it was a time where, I mean, I spoke to a Liberal who said to me, you know, you never get in the way of your enemy when it's making mistakes. The government was dealing with this, and there was too much politics, right?
I think so. I think it got ahead of the technical reasons for what went wrong.
And also the calamity, like, did anyone die? You know, how many 000 calls were made? It went straight to politics.
And also, like, I think it's fair to say that obviously the response this time was much better than it was with Optus. Like, the 000 custodian did, you know, like they were doing the follow-up calls, there were welfare checks taking place in a timely manner. So I think we have to make the point that in terms of the structures that were set up after the Optus failure, it was better handled.
It was better handled.
I like this, a couch and chair full of political journalists complaining that it went to politics too far.
Because the journalists were calling them, saying, tell me about the politics.
No.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's that thing, right? You know, you can see when people just overstep, and I think your point about the government wanting to make sure that the opposition looked like they were doing the wrong thing was exactly where they went straight away. Also on the conspiracy theory, and just to be clear, there was no malicious attack. That's according to Telstra, right? It was.
And I think the government's view is that at this point there's no evidence of a conspiracy or foreign interference in that system. So.
But what
it does show it shows the vulnerability,
exactly,
right?
And that's what's so scary about it.
It is.
If you want to attack something, go for the $22,000 piece.
People stranded, 000 calls. Like, the ramifications are genuinely alarming at how much we rely on this network. Well, One Nation leader Pauline Hanson was in the UK over the last week, spending time with far-right activist Tommy Robinson, touring his hometown of Luton.
What do you think of the demographic?
I'm gobsmacked because I wouldn't think that I was in England.
No questions? No questions.
Do you blame your governments for allowing it to get to this stage? This is not Great Britain to me, and that's why I'm going to protect Australia.
OK, so that's Pauline Hanson in the UK. Sarah, you've been doing a lot of reporting on One Nation. I think a lot of people probably know that, who are political junkies. What was this all about? Is it sort of Pauline Hanson learning lessons from what's going on with populism in the UK?
I mean, you know, it is Pauline Hanson doing what Pauline Hanson does best. She's trying to stoke outrage. She is doing this in a deliberate way to try and ensure that we're all talking about this outrageous thing she did with Tommy Robinson, and obviously there's a podcast to come out as well. I mean, Tommy Robinson is not very well known in Australia, I don't think, but in the UK, like, he's you know, too far right for Nigel Farage. He's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. He's, you know, convicted fraudster. He is a Putin fan. Like, you know, he's a bad dude, right? So Pauline wants us to be talking about this. I think that's very clear. And it's also a way of kind of reframing, like, if you go that far right, then it makes the, you know, slightly less far right more acceptable. So it is about sort of entrapping us in a way to be talking about this, because she wants to be setting the terms of debate in our politics at the moment.
Look, I think it was race baiting. I mean, I think that that what she's doing there is pretty ugly. And I don't think it washes with someone who has pretensions to power in Australia.
I think Andrew's right there. You know, a couple of weeks ago, she's at the press club. It's about appealing to a broader political audience in Australia, not just the traditional One Nation voter. This, to me, feels like it's reversing that. She's going to that fringe. This is a character who, I'm sure in Australia there are people who have the same views, but that's not the same group of people who give you government. And, you know, One Nation now has a desire to become a party of government. I have a question in my mind whether this is how you get there.
But this is sort of the tension at the core of the party, right? Like, they are a far-right party instinctively, and so they are going to do this sort of stuff to, like, dog whistle to their far-right support base.
Yeah, I mean, this is bread and butter stuff for Pauline Hanson. Look, what I thought was interesting this week was a really significant speech by the opposition leader, Angus Taylor, where he took on One Nation head-on. Here he is.
I understand why some Australians think the way out is to blow the place up. But to those who feel like lighting a match, believe me when I say that a moment of satisfaction isn't worth the eternity of pain that will follow. One Nation claims to offer a way out of our national malaise. In reality, they would only make things worse.
Let's work together. That's what I keep saying all the time. The people of Australia are crying out for change. Listen to the people, Angus, and work with me. Stop denigrating One Nation.
OK, so Angus Taylor, all of his colleagues, not all, sorry, but significant colleagues like Andrew Hastie been taking on One Nation. He hasn't until now. Why now?
Well, this is what he should have done weeks, if not months ago. The fact is that we all know that One Nation is an existential threat to the Liberal Party. There's no playing, you know, why play footsie with them? Andrew Hastie says, knock them down, slug them out.
He says it's war.
He says it's war. Now, and so that's the tension behind this. Angus Taylor has talked about, you know, well, his folk around him have talked about carving up seats. They talked about a preference deal 2 years from the next election. I mean, what is that? It's, in fact, Andrew Hastie told you about a week and a half ago, that signals weakness. Now, if it signals weakness, then Angus Taylor is effectively arriving at where Andrew Hastie was from the start, and that is these are your enemies. You don't get into bed with them.
Yeah, but it's interesting he's chosen to go them on economics. I thought that was interesting. He didn't go them on the cultural issues. You know, there are some significant cultural issues that are very important issues to people of right-wing persuasion. He didn't go there. It was about the numbers adding up. Sarah, there was one line that got me where he was basically saying they're less capable, One Nation, of adding up than Labor. And I heard that and I thought, that's quite a significant thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I thought were noteworthy. I mean, obviously, you're right. Going them on the economy is new. And there's all this sort of hand-wringing about you can't attack Pauline Hanson because that just galvanises her, so we have to play the ball, not the man, which I completely agree with. There's a vulnerability there with One Nation, particularly because of her unwavering support for Donald Trump and the war in Iran and the economic consequences of that for working people in Australia. So I thought it was really interesting that Taylor chose to go on that line. But I think the sort of flip side of that is what was Angus Taylor offering instead. He was saying, he was doing like classic status quo, you know, people don't like big government. I mean, you know, like people at the moment who are feeling economic pain are not sitting at home saying, oh, I really wish government would get out of my life. Like, cut the red and green tape, that's what's going to fix things for me. So I feel like we're kind of getting half the picture from Angus Taylor, which is, you know, criticising Labor and One Nation on the economy, but there's nothing from Angus Taylor which shows any sign of being anything other than the status quo, and people have rejected the status quo.
I was going to make a gag about the you know, an eternity of pain. I mean, ask the Liberal Party what that's like. But more seriously on the speech, I actually pushed back a little bit on that.
Okay, go.
I think Angus has laid out an economic argument. It got lost in his lines about One Nation. And it is where he feels confident to take One Nation on. And he is trying to rebuild that, you know, Liberal Party equity about fiscal management. It's pretty dry gruel for most people, but there is a group of Australians who probably do feel that actually it's time governments talked about balancing budgets and getting out of the way of some parts of the economy where it is now quite dominant. I don't think that's necessarily something that is alien to a lot of people.
It will be the economy. Sorry.
Yeah, go.
Oh, no, it just will be the economy at the next election. And this is the thing about One Nation, remember. In Britain, you don't have to vote. In Australia, you have to vote.
The economy's not theoretical. We've just had a week full of really bleak economic data.
Well, that wages data.
We've got wages growth is still negative. Real wages are going backwards. Standards of living are falling, and you have the lowest economic growth outlook since the early 90s, with the exception of a pandemic recession. So, Angus, I think his strategy is that when those tensions become apparent in people's lives, he can make the connection.
But is there an element of the internals going on here too? We've got, I mean, it's blatant to me with that quote from Andrew Hastie that we're seeing a feeling, I mean, I've spoken to front benchers, others in the Liberal Party who are like, well, about time. You know, so they're frustrated that Angus Taylor
there's others who go the other way and were quite cross that he had done that he'd taken on One Nation. Because the feeling is
Alex Antic, who's spoken out to me.
Among others, you know, that's a strategic mistake. But I think Canavan's shown the lead on this, and you know, obviously Hastie has shown you go after those folks. It's very analogous to what Labor does with the Greens.
Yeah, look, I think that Andrew Hastie is clearly the next man, unless Taylor picks up his game. When Andrew Hastie speaks, people listen. It's fascinating. It's compelling often, and that's the dynamic that Angus Hastie is combating.
Angus Hastie.
A bit like Sarah. Sarah.
It's okay, it's the A's, it's the A's.
Yeah.
Look, I want to go to the fallout from the Prime Minister's appearance last week on that podcast, the Bush Deep podcast with comedian Nikki Osborne. A lot of commentary about his comments around Kylie Minogue. He did issue an apology at the beginning of the week, which I haven't seen him issue an apology like this. But I want to play a clip of that podcast that I think is worth talking about. I actually thought the comments about the Japanese Prime Minister were the most controversial. Here he is.
The Japanese Prime Minister brought a melon.
How did he get that through customs?
It's a royal melon.
Oh, she smuggled. It was a she.
She?
Did she smuggle it?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm expecting.
Got a couple of melons.
She brought 2.
She brought 2, as you do.
She just came in looking like Pamela Anderson.
OK, Sarah. He's apologised. It's obvious to me why he had to apologise just watching that. But how big a blunder was this?
I mean, you know, that combined with the Kylie thing, I think is a blunder. I mean, I get that there's this idea that the Prime Minister has to connect with a younger audience and he's trying to be cool and relatable. I don't think the Prime Minister has to be cool and relatable. I really don't. I feel like the Kylie one, I mean, you know, the thing that drives me crazy is that politicians have made an art form of not answering questions of substance. Like, that's what they do. They're really good at it.
Oh,
like, he could say, I don't play that rule in, rule out game. Anything. Like, why was it so, how is it so easy to get an honest answer out of the Prime Minister? I mean, yeah, look, I think the whole thing is, you know, beneath the office of Prime Minister. I don't like it, and I don't think it even works. Like, I don't think it's going to make the young people think he's cool. I really don't.
But nor will it lose him any votes.
OK, that's an interesting perspective, because I was wondering, sometimes, you know, the press gallery, others are very focused on something. Do you think anyone out there really...
I do think, look, the risk is that suddenly some obscure podcast that was grubby and demeaning of his office becomes like a national talking point. That's the risk, right? But I think that in the broad, I don't think this will losing many votes. I think people will lose respect.
And that's respect, that matters, though.
Yeah, it does matter.
Look, you go into a contract when you go onto a podcast like that. It's a silly, humorous podcast. You can't sit there and not answer those questions. So you've kind of...
You can.
You could.
Yeah, but it looks silly, doesn't it? It looks silly.
It does. Why did you go?
Look, the whole thing's I think a massive beat up, quite frankly. We're meant to be this larrikin culture where we can, you know, we can pick between humour and serious.
Sure, but the Japanese Prime Minister...
I get that a lot of people will find that offensive and that it's a reflection of his character in a negative way. But, yeah, he probably felt that he could take that risk, and look what happened.
I don't think it's deeply offensive. I think it's just kind of stupid.
Yeah. And he's very lucky in many ways that there hasn't been a bigger backlash potentially from Japan. And I say this because I've spoken to Labor people who say, oh, we were a bit nervous, you know. Like...
I mean, it is casual misogyny. Like, if that had been said about Julia Gillard when she was Prime Minister, people, you know, like, it is casual misogyny. Sorry, guys, it is.
Yeah?
I just think... all I'm thinking is...
I'm going with Sarah.
Yeah, OK.
If Angus Taylor had said it, there would be a bigger reaction in certain parts of the media.
True.
Or a Scott Morrison or someone like that. You know,
but he did get a reaction.
He's been beaten for it all week.
That's right.
And he's had to apologise, which you pointed out earlier, he rarely does.
Yeah, and it's an unequivocal apology.
Yeah. And it came out very quickly.
Yeah, on the Monday, that's right. Time now for Mike Bowers and Talking Pictures, but we'll be back with, of course, your final observations.
I'm Mike Bowers and I'm photographer at large for the New Daily. I'm talking pictures this morning with cartoonist for Guardian Australia, the one and only Fiona Katauskas, and a very warm welcome.
It is lovely to be here, Mike.
This week, our Prime Minister hosted the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, and he certainly can pull a crowd, Modi.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was marvellous at Marvel, apparently.
Expertly done Mark Knight cartoon. Oh, sure, I sell out Marvel all the time.
Oh, well, at least he's got a captive audience there.
Yeah. Top shelf from David Rowe. Narendra Modi Political Yoga School. We've got...
Warrior Pose, Defence and Security.
Crouching Elbow, Trade and Economy.
Downward Dog, Clean Energy. Oh, we've got to love a fart joke.
You've got to love it. It's always the little details with David, isn't it?
Blind monkey pose, human rights with his feet in his mouth.
Yeah, pretty uncomfortable positions, some of these, I think.
Sometimes,
probably.
Yes.
This week, the Prime Minister visited our mates in the Pacific, but the old China plate wasn't too happy with it.
It was a bit of, she loves me not.
Yeah, I think Xi Jinping had to change his relationship status to some of the Pacific members.
Yes, and whatever happens, it's complicated.
It is very complicated. So, Xi Jinping, shag, marry, avoid.
As a cartoonist, it's such a joy when you can combine two issues in the news at the same time.
Yeah.
So hats off, David Rowe. This was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. David Pope, the dream of playing for Australia. Did you know in the old days this was called sport rather than geopolitical soft power diplomacy?
Well, I think with the Ocean of Peace agreements, they missed an opportunity there to call it the League of Peace. Then they could have tied the politics and sport together.
Badu Chow, whose cartoons are always really sharp and to the point, he's replaced the dancing dragon with the fissile missile here.
Yes, yeah, and Badu Chow is an Australian citizen and a Chinese dissident, so these issues are all very close to his heart. But that is a march forward that could change the world.
Yeah. They say that politics is the art of the possible, but the Prime Minister this week found it the art of the podcast. Next in our game of flirt with commit to or dump.
And she's holding up the sign here, real gambling reforms. Got any questions about Kylie?
All he had to do was stick with, I've just married. Surely.
Yeah. I don't know, something about when you talk about Kylie, Australians get all...
They get all nuts.
Yeah.
Matt Bissett-Johnson.
I laughed out loud, but also sort of died inside reading this cartoon. Angus Taylor has stated empirically he would not have sex with Kylie Minogue.
Good job, well done, Angus. I don't think that's really the flex he thinks it is.
You know what, Mike? He should be so lucky, lucky.
Yeah, lucky. Australia's biggest telecommunications company, Telstra, who suffered an outage this week.
Apparently, studies have shown that telcos are Australia's second least favourite industry, so...
What's the most in journalism?
Social media.
Oh, right.
We got away with it.
We got away with it. Smoke signals.
With mobiles down, people are turning to other methods of communication. The terrible thing about this was your phone's down and then you can't even get on social media to bitch about it with everyone because,
my phone's down, damn it. Tom Red thinks he's found the reason for it and it's that thug of a seal, Neil.
It is. Oh, I had another LOL when I read this. Breaking, cause of massive Telstra disruption confirmed.
Yeah.
See, they said it was a technical glitch, Mike, but it was actually a seal that had come loose.
Fiona,
it's not your fault, Neil. We all love you.
It's been a great pleasure unpicking events this week.
Now, before we go and before we get to final observations, you're probably already aware that TV's Night of Nights is coming up, and I thoroughly urge you to vote for David Spears for most popular news or public affairs presenter for the Logies. We have that QR code, of course. We had it on the screen. You can just see it there. Vote often, all the time, but also don't stack your votes because that's very undemocratic and I don't want to... I'm into democracy. One vote, one value. Final observations.
Look, there is a little company called Northern Minerals in WA and 6 Chinese investors were given until July 2nd to divest themselves of these shares in this company because it is seen as a national security priority. They are yet to divest. Jim Chalmers fined other Chinese interests $14 million in January. I don't think that's been paid. The foreign investment regime is toothless and it's over to Jim Chalmers now to see what he can do.
That's really interesting. Sarah?
So over in WA, again, the by-election for Secret Harbour will be held next month. This is caused by the resignation of Paul Papalia. What's interesting about it is that this covers the northernmost part of Andrew Hastie's seat of Canning. One Nation has said they will run. It's going to be very interesting to watch the resources that are put behind that, as One Nation has clearly signalled that they are going to target Andrew Hastie and Canning. It's a really interesting one to watch, and also interesting to see the ground game that the Liberal Party play.
Yeah, it will be, and also that sort of booth-by-booth analysis for the Liberals and others to understand just what's happening with that vote, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely one to watch.
I refuse to be WA-centric on this
take
morning.
a stand.
AI, I think it's a big deal, this speech. You alluded to in your interview with the Minister. The Prime Minister's really got to land a very, very challenging set of circumstances. Australians are very sceptical about AI, the energy that it uses and whether it's just a way to suck all the surplus value out of our labour force to a bunch of, sort of creatures in Silicon Valley, or is it a way to break some of these productivity problems that we've got? And, there'll be unions, there'll be business. It's a really difficult one to land.
And Labor's National Conference is coming up and the unions are really, really active on this issue. So this speech is pivotal in terms of, will they legislate? I mean, they've been holding back, but they actually might do something even more than we thought, Jacob.
And then they've got business saying, don't do that, don't put roadblocks up because we're a taker of this technology, we're not an inventor of it, and if you put barriers up, we won't get the benefits. So really interesting stuff ahead.
You have been an excellent panel. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks Probes. For those who think UK politics is a bin fire, Count Binface might be the perfect candidate. But as the political media are quickly learning, new interview techniques may be required. We'll leave that with you. Thanks for watching.
Are you actually going to fight a sort of serious door-by-door, street-by-street campaign in the seat?
No.
You're not?
Well, why should I? I don't have to do that. I mean, it's a heat wave, for goodness sake. It's hard enough sitting here talking to you, Andrew. Are you trying to kill me or what?
You're making us all feel very excited about being here.